Hey folks, welcome back to my rustic tiny. For those who are new, I'm a complete beginner building the DIY tiny house of my dreams. In my previous video on this tiny house build, I talked about my process for designing, building, and installing my ridge beam and the various supports needed to hold it up, and also a little bit about adding the sheathing to the roof. In this video, I'll be talking about adding the wall sheathing. So it's Sunday evening, and we were able to finish getting all of the sheathing up on this port side wall. Still have to tape the seams and finish taping the eaves up top with the zip tape. Tomorrow we're planning on working on this bow end, adding all the sheathing to that, and potentially starting on the starboard side, or just working on this other end wall and saving the starboard side until Friday. But it's been a pretty long day today. Just as with the roof sheathing and the rafters, things didn't seem to quite line up as well as I would have liked them to. There were only a few, it seemed, that made it the full 8 feet and ended squarely on a stud. So I'm not expecting the other side to be much better. Maybe the end walls, there's less space for error to be accumulated in the studs, but we'll see tomorrow. This is the start of the 26th full work day on this tiny house, and this right here will be the before picture, and our goal is to get this bow end wall sheathed today. It should be easy job compared to this big long port side wall. And then after we finish that, I will add a bunch of the zip tape around the seams as I can. Hopefully finish up there around the roof eaves. Here's the inside of the newly sheathed port side wall. It's a little after 8 a.m. and I can definitely feel the chillier weather settling in, which makes me feel the time crunch for getting the rest of the house dried in. The end walls, this whole entire starboard side, need sheathing. It's a little after 8 a.m. on September 9th. We're going to be working on more sheathing today. We did this bow end yesterday. We're waiting until we can create another scrap big enough to fit into this opening. We'll either work on the stern end today or start putting panels on the starboard side. So as we're measuring and cutting for this piece right here that will span out to the end of the cantilever and go down and sit on this edge of the previous row of zip panel, we first set the full sheet up there, we clamp it in place, and then we get up and under here. We come around on the back side and we trace on the back of the zip panel where this falls exactly, so there's no guesswork. The first time we did it over on this side, I took lots and lots of measurements. I marked everything out very carefully and I was still off by a little bit. So for the previous two, it's worked very well, and this is the third and final one we'll need for this house. And takes away all of the guesswork. And right here is where it's just been cut out on the back side. We'll bring that back up there, we'll test fit it, take it back down, apply the glue to the studs, and then that piece will be finished. And then to cut around these wheel wells, we did a very similar thing. We got the sheet up there, we got it clamped into place, clamped it to a stud at each end. And then I got up under here. We first cut a preliminary chunk out of it, which gave me about 3 inches of play to avoid cutting it too far. We cut that out, and then we stuck it back up there, and I got my pen, my marker from the back side, and I just traced right along this edge here of the wheel well onto, again, the back of this zip panel, and it's been a very helpful method to get a pretty accurate cut there. So this is the back of the tiny house, the starboard side. My dad and I were able to do all of these panels on our previous work day, and today we'll be finishing up this narrow section. We'll be finishing up this section on the bow end, and then there's those panels down at the stern end. But I'm expecting to be able to finish all those things today, and then all of the sheathing will be done. Bright and early on Saturday, September 13th. Yesterday we were able to finish the sheathing on both end walls on the starboard side. So now all of the zip is added, and today we'll be taping all of the seams. We left some of these seams untaped because that's where the windows are going to be cut out anyways. So there's 3 along this bottom section on this side. There's the loft windows. That one has accidentally been taped over. This one we'll try to keep track of. In the coming days, it's supposed to be, the temperature is supposed to get up into the 80s, which is going to make the inside pretty hot and steamy when we're putting in the hurricane ties and things like that. It'll just basically be a big hot shed. But at least it won't be raining inside. And I'll have to go ahead and order a door to install. I'm still waiting on the windows. I think they might have another week or so before the 6 weeks is up from when I ordered them, so that will be exciting to receive also. So right now I'm up on the roof and I'm filling in all of these little nail holes with this roof sealant. It's not Zip brand because that was a lot more expensive, so it's just a different brand of roof sealant that's supposed to be resistant to UV and heat and remain flexible and things like that. And so even though I plan on putting an underlayment on the roof, it's kind of like belt and suspenders way of just sealing up all these holes before I put that other layers on there, because it might be a certain amount of time before the underlayment gets put on anyways. I'm also using that roof sealant to fill in all of the nail holes along the sides of the house. Those tape ones were when we first put these panels up. I didn't have the liquid stuff yet, so I used patches of zip tape, which I don't know which is better or not, but for right now it's a lot faster to just put a blob of this stuff on there and then smear it in with this thing. I did have an extra helper who came to help with a few of the walls, plus all of the seam taping and nail hole sealing, which I was super grateful for. They're a fellow alum of Hammerstone School and were interested in volunteering. So I'm very grateful to Emmy for their help, even though I wasn't able to get actual footage of us working together on the build. But just know that they made a huge difference in this process. Right now I'm marking out where all of the 16 on center studs are along all these walls, so that when the 2-inch exterior insulation gets put on here, we can locate the furring strips, or we can locate where the studs are, so we can screw the furring strips into the studs to secure not only the exterior insulation more fully, but also to create a rain screen. So I'm just following where all of these marker lines are that we drew with a square as we were putting up the sheathing, and I'll just go along on the bottom and then on the top and just mark out where those places are with the tape. Something that I didn't quite touch on during the video is the importance of maintaining an 1/8 of an inch spacing around and between the different sheathing panels to allow for expansion. Now this goes for wall sheathing, roof sheathing, subfloor, anything where you're going to be using sheet goods. That 1/8 of an inch spacing is pretty important. In this case with zip panels, you would use the zip flashing tape between all of the seams. Make sure to roll your tape, very important, it's written on the whole roll of tape, to roll it with a J roller because it is pressure activated, which helps it to adhere more permanently after being rolled. Another thing I did, because this is a tiny house that will be traveling down the road at times, was add construction adhesive to the studs just before nailing in the sheathing panels with ring shank galvanized sheathing nails. So the reason I went with zip panels for the wall sheathing instead of plywood, which many would say plywood is always the better option because it has higher drying capacity than an OSB product. But the reason I went with zipped is because once the flashing tape is added to all the seams, it's its own weather resistive barrier. So that saves me a step of then having to add house wrap to the entire outside of the house, which if you're working with plywood or plain OSB, you do need to add house wrap as a weather resistive barrier. So saving that step meant it was easier, it was faster for a very small crew, such as in this case with primarily me and my dad. There is an upcoming video you'll see where I do regret using zip panels for the roof for a very specific reason. There is a huge failure with the underlayment, which I'll get into. That was a whole thing. But for the walls, it's been pretty easy to work with, aside from the hassle. I mean, save the hassle of not using the house wrap, but then there's the hassle of adding zip tape to all of the seams and liquid flashing to all of the nail holes. So thanks everyone for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe, and keep an eye out for my upcoming videos. Next we'll be cutting the window openings, adding 2-inch window bucks, and explaining what those are and why they're needed in this build. Adding liquid flashing and then zip tape flashing to the window openings to prepare for the window install. All right, see you later, folks.